Hey everybody, welcome to part 3 of the video series on how to control your emotions. In a previous video, we learned about rational and irrational beliefs and how to dispute self-defeating irrational thoughts. In this video, we'll elaborate more upon different forms irrational beliefs may take and distinguish between healthy and unhealthy emotions. So as we covered in the previous video, unhealthy emotions are caused by irrational beliefs. And irrational beliefs tend to deviate from reality, they're illogical, self-defeating, and rigid and absolutistic. Here are some examples of commonly held irrational beliefs. See if you can spot or relate to any of these. I need significant others to approve of me and everything I do, or that'll prove I'm a worthless person. This type of irrational belief will lead to social anxiety and neediness. And it's irrational because 1. You never actually need the approval of others. You can survive without it. It will just be desirable. And 2. Your worth as a person is not dependent upon people approving of you. A second example. If I fail in this one important task, that'll prove that I'm a complete and total failure. If failing at one important task makes you a complete and total failure, then succeeding at one important task will make you a complete and total success at all times. So clearly, both of these statements are false and don't make sense. Nobody is completely perfect and nobody is a complete failure. As humans, we're all fallible and will fail and succeed at different things. Nobody succeeds 100% of the time and nobody fails 100% of the time. So failing at one thing cannot ever make you a complete failure. If you hold this type of irrational belief, it'll lead to anxiety regarding your task and potentially low self-esteem and depression if you don't succeed at the task. Another belief that probably all of us hold at different times of our life will be, I can only do something when I feel sufficiently motivated. Chronic procrastinators, how many times have you said this to yourself, that you get to the task you've been putting off when you feel like it? Pro tip, you don't ever need to feel highly motivated to go and do something. You can actually do it anyway, regardless of how you're feeling. And another irrational belief, commonly held by people that are socially anxious, is assuming that everybody around you is paying careful attention to everything that you do and will judge you harshly over minor mistakes you make. When in reality, most people are just going about their days more focused upon themselves than other people. Albert Ellis, the founder of REBT, initially identified 12 core irrational beliefs that lie behind all unhealthy emotional reactions. However, upon further investigation, he found they could ultimately be grouped into 3 distinct categories of beliefs. And all 3 of these beliefs are absolutistic demands that often come in the form of must and should statements. These 3 categories of irrational beliefs are musts directed against oneself, such as I must succeed at everything I do, I must be an emotionally strong person at all times, and I must be a well-liked person. The second category of beliefs are must directed against others. Other people must agree with me on a topic, or they're complete idiots. Other people must act competently at all times, or they're completely useless. And other people must be kind and fair towards me, or they're 100% bad people. And the last category of irrational beliefs are must directed against the world and external conditions. The world must be 100% fair, or else it's absolutely terrible. Life must be easy and comfortable for me, or it's unbearable. And the political system must be the way I want it to be, or else it's complete garbage. So when we have these type of thoughts, we're making an irrational and absolutistic demand upon reality. We're saying I, others, and the world must be the way I want them to be no matter what. And this is problematic and irrational because others and the world never need to be the way that you'd like them to be. It would just be nice if they were. And when you think in these demanding, absolutistic ways, you're going to emotionally disturb yourself. For example, if you think, I must give a stellar presentation no matter what, you're going to experience anxiety at the thought of not giving a stellar presentation, and you may also procrastinate on preparing your presentation due to your feelings of anxiety. You're probably also going to think other irrational thoughts such as, if I don't give a stellar presentation, that'll be horrible. I couldn't stand the idea of not giving a stellar presentation. Or, if I don't, others will judge and laugh at me. How terrible would that be? Or, because I failed at this talk, I'll fail at everything I do. Therefore, there's no point in trying to do anything. Perhaps I'll just never be happy in life. And if you have these type of thoughts that go along with it, you're going to experience further feelings of anxiety and potentially depression. According to REBT theory, whilst absolutistic should and must statements are illogical and unhealthy, you can instead replace them with sensible preference statements. Preferences are the healthy, rational alternative to should and must statements. So instead of thinking, I must give a stellar presentation no matter what, which leads to perfectionism and anxiety, you can instead think, I prefer to give a stellar presentation. Now, when you think in this way, instead of experiencing anxiety, you will have healthy concern about the possibility of not giving a good presentation, and you will experience healthy motivation to give a stellar presentation. And if you only prefer to give a stellar presentation, you will also think other rational thoughts about the possibility of not giving a stellar presentation, such as, if I don't, that would be unfortunate but not terrible, and whilst it's possible that others may judge me if I give a poor talk, that would be unfortunate, but it would not be the end of the world. So whenever you find yourself experiencing an unhealthy emotion, such as anxiety or depression, look for your demanding should and must thoughts, and try to change them to a healthy preference statement instead. In the last video, we noted that rational thoughts are characterized by being real, they're logical, flexible, and self-constructive. As you can see in these examples, the alternative preference statements are flexible and not rigid. They're also logical and based in reality because it really is true that you have certain preferences. However, must statements are illogical. It is never true that things must be the way you want them to be. They are also inflexible and self-defeating instead of self-constructive. By being flexible with yourself, others, and life, and not making any rigid demands upon the world, you'll be able to roll with the punches that life throws at your way. Now, this doesn't mean that you'll always be happy, because let's face it, life can suck sometimes, but it does mean that you avoid falling into self-destructive feelings and behaviors. Now, I've been using the term unhealthy emotions throughout this video. Let's get a bit clearer on what we mean by this from an REBT perspective. So emotions obviously can be divided into two categories, positive and negative. So positive emotions are those that feel good, happiness, excitement, love, gratitude, and negative emotions are those that are unpleasant to experience, like sadness, disappointment, anger, anxiety, shame. So here's something I want all of you to consider. Are negative emotions always bad for you to experience? Well, from an REBT perspective, some negative emotions can actually be good for you to experience. That's right, negative emotions can actually be good for you at times. That may sound contradictory, but it isn't. So why might certain negative emotions be good for you to experience? Well, first we must realize that emotions serve a purpose. Emotions have actually been hardwired into most animals, from humans to horses, chimps, and dogs. Most animals display a variety of emotions, and these emotions in general seem to be adaptive and increase their survivability. For example, when a goat spots a tiger stalking it, it experiences fear, which activates the fight or flight response in the goat. In turn, this provides the motivation and energy for the goat to get away from the lion. While we would regard fear as a negative emotion, since it is unpleasant to experience, it clearly aids in the survivability of animals. In other words, self-constructive. In this example, fear would actually be a healthy negative emotion. Therefore, whilst emotions are either positive or negative, they can also be categorized as being either healthy or unhealthy, depending on whether they're self-constructive and helpful, and whether they match the reality of the situation. According to REBT theory, it's actually a good thing for humans to experience some negative emotions, but only those that are healthy. Healthy negative emotions signal to you that your preferences are not being met, and either motivate you to fix that, or ultimately to process the negative experience and learn to live with it. For example, if you have an upcoming deadline for an assignment, it would be healthy for you to experience the negative emotion of concern. Whilst concern is unpleasant to experience, it also focuses your attention on the upcoming deadline and motivates you to work on the assignment so you can submit it in time. If you were to feel neutral about an upcoming deadline, That would mean you don't care at all about missing the deadline, and you'd have little to no motivation to work on the assignment. On the other hand, the unhealthy version of concern would be anxiety. Why is this? Well, while anxiety does help focus your attention on the upcoming deadline, the feeling is often so intense and unpleasant that it actually interferes with your ability to actually work on the assignment, and often leads people to actually procrastinate on the assignment to avoid the anxious feelings. In other words, anxiety is usually self-defeating, whilst concern is self-constructive. So if you're wondering whether you're experiencing an appropriate negative emotion or not, just ask yourself, does this match the badness of the situation? And does it help me get what I want out of life? Does this negative emotion have any benefits? And do the benefits outweigh the costs? Here is a quick list of unhealthy negative emotions and their corresponding healthy versions. For example, we have depression versus sadness, anxiety versus concern, guilt versus remorse, and rage versus healthy anger. So let's once again go through a guided exercise together. So write down your emotional difficulties via the ABC model, or use the previous ABC exercise you did from the past videos. Check to see if the C is a healthy or unhealthy emotion by asking yourself, does this seem appropriate to the situation, and does it help me achieve my goals in life? If it's an unhealthy emotion, the main REBT method to change it to a healthy emotion is to dispute it. So again at D, this is a step where we begin to question and argue against this irrational belief. So at D, write out the questions, what evidence is there to prove this belief? Does this belief make sense? Is it reasonable? And 3, does this belief help me? What results will it bring me? Will it hold me back in life or propel me forward in life? After you've written those questions, the next step is E, which stands for Effective New Beliefs. This is where you write out your answers to the questions at D. So at E for Effective New Beliefs, write with as much detail and emotional force your effective new life attitudes or beliefs about the activating event. So for instance, in this situation, we might write, there is no damn evidence I must give a stellar presentation. There's no law of the universe that forces me to give a stellar presentation. It's just a silly rule that I thought up. Another answer could be, no, the belief doesn't make sense. If I must give a stellar presentation no matter what, then it's 100% certain that I will, and this is obviously false. There's always a chance I could give a poor presentation. And if I do, I won't drop dead and the world won't end. So in reality, I'd only like to give a stellar presentation. There's no reason that I absolutely must give a stellar presentation. And the last response could be, if I keep holding on to this belief, I'll continue to maintain my anxiety about the talk and probably procrastinate on preparing the presentation to avoid my anxious feelings. This is unhelpful, therefore it's clearly better for me if I give up this belief and replace it with just a preference and not an irrational demand. The next step, as you guessed, would be to add F, which stands for New Feelings. So these are the feelings that are arising from writing out your effective new beliefs. So what emotions do you have from having these new thoughts? Or what emotions would logically stem from really holding on to these new effective beliefs? In this example, the new feelings could be concern and not anxiety, relief from reduced levels of stress and anxiety about the presentation, and healthy motivation to work on the presentation instead of procrastinating on it due to anxiety. Now, if you strongly and continually write out these A, B, C, D, E, F exercises every day, you will gradually or maybe even quickly develop new and healthier emotions about the activating event. It may not always work immediately, but if you repeat these exercises for days, weeks, and months, you'll gradually develop conviction in the new effective beliefs, and you lose conviction in the irrational beliefs. Over time, you'll find it easier to maintain healthy rather than unhealthy emotions. So I really encourage all of you to persist in doing these written exercises because they truly are life-changing. And if doing the written exercises has actually helped you, please comment below as I'd be really interested to see your results. And lastly, if the video was helpful, please give it a like and subscribe as I'll continue to churn out helpful videos for all of you. So thanks so much for watching and happy living.